Hi, I'm Callie from CRK Training. In this video, we're going to be talking about whips and crops, when and how to use them. So we're going to go over three things. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the types of whips that are out there and why and when we might use a whip. Second, we're going to talk about how we want to use a whip. And then third, I'm going to give you some ideas for you how you can practice using a whip so that you're going to be more effective with it when you actually do it with your horse. So there are tons of different whips out there. I've got three here that are obviously very different lengths. This is typically considered a crop. Usually the shorter they go, the shorter ones are considered a bats. The ones that are like 18 inches in length are usually considered crops. And then the longer ones are usually whips. This is like a dressage whip length. And then this is like an in-hand whip, or even longer ones are lunging whips. So when would you use these different types of whip? Well, I actually hardly ever use short ones, and I'm going to explain why in just a moment. But I usually don't use short ones, and if I'm riding, I like a whip to be about this length. So this one is about 2.5 feet long, and again, this is just kind of a standard dressage whip. This one would be pretty clumsy to ride with, and that's actually what we're going to be focusing on in today's video, is how do you use a whip more effectively anytime, but even specifically when you're riding. So for today's video, we're going to be using this one. Now, when or why would we use a whip? The first step to being effective with a whip is to know why you're using it and what you want the horse to do as a result of your using the whip. In other words, what behavior or what is the horse going to do that you're going to then stop using it? So this may be a different way of thinking about a whip. A lot of times people use whips as a punishment. So for example, a horse maybe is jumping and comes to the base of a jump and stops. So they hold him there and they smack him with the whip in an attempt to punish him for the refusal of going over the jump. So a lot of times the whip is used as a punishment in that context. Or another example would be a horse that bucks. So he bucks, and then after the buck, we're told to whip the horse to punish him and tell him that he's not supposed to buck anymore. The problem with using whips as a punishment is that most of the time our timing is not good enough. We're too slow using the whip after the horse has done the undesired behavior, and the horse never connects it. So for example, with the horse in front of the jump, when we smack him with the whip when he's in front of the jump, instead of the horse actually being able to understand that I refused, that's why I was whipped, instead the horse just connects the front of the jump with being whipped and is just going to develop more fear, or is probably going to try to get away from the jump or from specifically that place in front of the jump more quickly. So that's the problem with punishments. A lot of times the horse doesn't connect it. So instead of us actually reducing the undesired behavior, we end up just creating more fear or more stress in the horse. The other way that a whip can be ineffective or can accidentally cause more bad behaviors from the horse is when we release it at the wrong time. So if we're whipping and the whip stops on the horse doing something, the horse is going to connect that thing that he did with the whip stopping. So a very classic example of this is when we use the whip to try to get a horse to go forward. So if we use the whip, but we don't use it steady, or we accidentally release. So let's say we're using the whip like this, and the horse decides instead of going forward, he's going to throw a kick, or he's going to throw a buck in response to the whip, and that movement unbalances us enough that we have to stop whipping. We've basically just told the horse, do more of that kick or that buck. So that's where a whip can cause more harm than good, if we're using it as punishment, or if we are accidentally stopping the whip when the horse does something that we don't want. So that brings us into the next section of this video, and I'm going to get on Ace here behind me, and I'm going to show you exactly how we use the whip in order to avoid those bad things from happening. When you use the whip, you want to use it in a consistent tapping movement versus just smacking with the whip. The reason we do this is because then we can tap, 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 tap. When the horse does the right thing, what we're going to do today for Ace, the right thing is going to be moving forward. So when Ace moves forward, I'm going to release the whip. The consistent light tapping allows me to be able to keep the pressure there if he was to do something else. So if he was to decide that to kick out, or to start backing up, or to shake his head, or do a number of other things, I would be able to just keep tapping. As soon as he offered the correct thing, the correct movement going forward, I can just stop. When I tap with the whip, it's not as painful, or usually not as scary to the horse as just being smacked with the whip. So it allows them to kind of think through and think about the different choices that they have for what they're going to do. And when they pick the right one, by releasing the whip, by stopping it, then I'm able to communicate to him that yes, that's the right thing. So it's basically using the whip to apply pressure and release, just like maybe you've been taught pressure and release with doing things on the ground, or with, say, using your reins by applying pressure and then releasing the rein when the horse stops. Now, this is the reason that I prefer the longer whip, the more dressage length whip, over a short crop or a bat. I find that it's more difficult to get the tapping movement with those short tools versus this length of whip. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to demonstrate how I do this. Another place that people often have trouble with is being able to hold the rein and use the whip at the same time, but I'm going to get to that and how you can practice in just a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think forward. I'm going to start tapping with the whip. As soon as he moves forward, I stop. We've got a little steering issue too. So I can do that again to go into the trot. I'm going to start tapping with the whip. When I feel the forward movement, I stop. Let me switch it to this hand so you can see it. Start tapping, and then stop for the forward movement. Now, this probably makes sense, but using the whip in this manner can actually be a little bit more difficult than maybe it just looked as I was going around there. So here's kind of your homework. Here's what you want to practice. And the biggest suggestion, the biggest tip that I can give you to not get frustrated when you first start using a whip is to practice it off the horse. Practice it when you don't have the added stress of having to worry about your timing, having to worry about what the horse is doing, or even having to worry about other reactions to the whip that your horse might do. So what you want to do when you're using the whip is, I find it usually works best to keep your thumb on the top, and the movement is really through your forearm. So you don't want to have lots of movement this way or this way through your wrist, and you don't want to have movement in your arm because you won't be able to be steady enough. So it's more of just a movement kind of through your forearm, and I think of it as kind of a wiggle of the wrist, but your wrist stays straight. And you can play with different ways of holding the whip to find what feels steadiest for you. Now, once you're steady just doing that part, just using the whip like this, now you're going to add in holding the rein and seeing if you can keep the positioning of your hand very stable as you're using the whip. You can see in this way, there's a little bit of a vibration on the rein, but I'm not really having to pull, or I'm not making a big change in the position or in the contact of the rein in order to use the whip. So practice this just on yourself like I did here in the beginning. Practice it on your leg before you try it on your horse. And then when you first go to your horse, know what it is you want. Pick something very simple like just halt to walk, and then work on getting your timing that you're able to really control using the whip, stopping the whip, using the whip, stopping the whip. I usually also recommend starting with your dominant hand. So I'm right-handed. So start with your easiest hand, get good with that hand first, and then switch hands and work on the more difficult hand or side for you to use. So this is our video on using the whip. I hope this was helpful for you. This is, I find, a concept that is really key to a lot of different things that we end up doing with our horses. So I would love to get your thoughts in the comments of this video. And as always, if you're watching this anywhere besides crktrainingblog.com, go there to leave your comments, and I've got tons of other free videos for you. Thanks for watching.